There you go. Have a good meeting.
You too.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Sorry about that, Frank, but I couldn't get in the normal way.
I have had those issues myself.
Well, it's
Not
nice
here.
to have company.
All right. Good evening to everybody. Before we get started, I just have to read a couple of quick things here. As I said before, this is conservation meeting of April 24th. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You're hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Scituate in accordance with the open meeting law. The town of Scituate, Massachusetts, has a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusions. This Conservation Commission is committed to providing an environment of respect during our meetings. We ask that all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there is disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcome and respected. We ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards and support and respect our community. That said, we have an agenda for the evening, and I'd like a motion to accept that agenda. I would like to, at the end of the meeting, if we have a few minutes, just fill you in on where we are with some of our open space projects. But other than that, is there anybody else that wants to add anything to the agenda or change it?
Nope.
No. I'll make a motion. We accept the agenda as written with the add-on of Frank's to discuss possibly some open space projects.
Okay, thank you, Penny. So tonight we have Richard and Penny and Andy and Brendan, am I right?
No, just
Oh,
Brendan,
no, Andy. Okay, Brendan.
Brendan
all
and
right.
Frank.
So do I have a second
Yep.
I'll second that,
from Brendan?
Brendan.
All in favor, Richard
Yes.
and
Frank.
Frank. Good. That's gonna make it quick. All right. So first thing on the agenda,
They want to continue.
well, we have a piece here, the Scituate Salt Marsh.
We're gonna do that first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who do we
Yep.
have on
Della Shepherd and Joanne Wickoff.
Wyckoff. Yep.
Wyckoff?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Should I start?
This is who?
This is Joanne Wyckoff. I'm going to introduce myself.
Okay, sure. Yes, please, Joanne. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for letting us do this brief presentation tonight. My name's Joanne Wyckoff. I live at 154 Turner Road, and Dallas Shepherd, my colleague, lives at 70 Scituate Avenue.
Great. So the only thing I'm going to ask you, and I appreciate your bringing these to our attention,
5 minutes.
we do have a fairly decent agenda after this. So if you
Yep.
could kind of make your point and give the members a chance to ask you a few questions. So
Yeah, we've
Thank
kind
you.
of timed everything to 5 minutes. If that's
awesome. Yep.
which hopefully, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
in September 2022, we started a new environmental group, the Scituate Salt Marsh Stewardship Initiative. At present, our group has 12 members, some of whom are here tonight on this Zoom call. The group is dedicated to cleaning up and restoring the Sand Hills Marsh, but eventually we hope to work on the other marshes in Scituate, of which there are 1,600 acres. We've been consulting with key science and government people to understand our marsh, and the experts have highlighted for us the ways that the marsh has been filled, polluted, and starved of salt water. We'd like to bring our marsh back to health. Della will take you on a quick tour of the marsh and tell you about its problems and what needs fixing.
Hi, all.
Thank you.
Hi, all. Can you see me? Oh, good.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks. The Sand Hill Salt Marsh is near Scituate Harbor. We just wanted to show you where it is in relation to the lighthouse. And it lies between Turner, Otis, and Jericho Road, which you can see on the next picture.
Mhm.
There you go. You see all the houses and dunes along Turner to Jericho Road and pavement. They were built on a line of coastal dunes, the sand hills for which this part of town was named. Back of the dunes is a salt marsh. Scituate Avenue divides the marsh in two. Salt water gets into the marsh from Scituate Harbor through a tide gate at Jericho Road. From the tide gate, the water is piped underground to the main marsh channel. To get to the rest of the marsh, the water is piped under Scituate Avenue. Now, if you go to the next pictures, this is, if you're standing on Scituate Avenue and you look north and then south, this is what the marsh looks like. See all those reeds? You know what they are. They're Phragmites, the sign of a dying salt marsh. They've invaded here, nearly obliterating the true salt marsh plants. Phragmites die in salt water. They only grow on higher ground, the places where the marsh has been filled by people dumping yard waste and by storms dumping sediments and debris, where there's not enough tide water flow to scour out the fill. Judging by the extent of the Phragmites, a lot of this marsh has disappeared, turned into higher ground. That's a problem. Could you bring up the next picture, please? The flooding one. Climate change is intensifying storms and flooding. We need places to put all the flood water. A marsh that's been filled can't hold flood water and keep it from our homes. A marsh that's been polluted by debris, pet waste, plastic trash dumped by people and by storms hurts wildlife. It makes our neighborhood ugly and unhealthy for us too. Here's what's happening in Sand Hills. Storms dump a huge amount of sediment and debris all along Turner Road. If you bring up picture 5, you can see all the areas where sand comes in, circled in red. A lot of this material advances into the marsh, burying it and polluting it. Storms drive it in and people bulldoze it in after a storm. People have also dumped demolition debris and yard waste, grass, leaves, tree trimmings, container plants into the marsh. Landscaper trucks have dumped full loads. The piles have been building for so long that they've hardened into embankments. There are trees growing in some of them. Big items, a fiberglass boat and the wall of the house have been abandoned in the marsh and left there for years. And that's on the next picture. There's a map showing where these big items are. And then the next page shows the three big items. There are 3 vacant houses crumbling into the marsh and dunes, and that's on the next picture. And then there's encroachment. The Scituate Beach Association operates a ball field and a parking lot that have encroached deeply into the wetlands. And you can see the parking lot on this picture. The marsh has been littered with plastic and trash. It's been degraded with petrochemicals dripped from parked cars and boat trailers and leaching from fill. Storm surges blasting through home storage spaces carry jugs of chemicals and pesticides into the marsh. Dog waste is everywhere, introducing fecal bacteria into the wetlands, as does the town's leaky sewer pump station on Scituate Avenue. That can lead to beach closures. So what do? Our group has made some progress improving the health of the marsh. 1, we've arranged for a scientific assessment of whether enough salt water is getting into the marsh. This involves the installation of water loggers to collect data on tidal flows. If they reveal that not enough salt water is getting in, the tide gate can be reset to let in more. 2, we've removed more than 12 truckloads and 50 contractor bags of storm debris and yard waste. Our members pick up trash in this area every day, and the DPW says they'll give us disposal bags. 3, we've removed hundreds of pounds of poop. We need 5 pet waste stations so people have a way to pick up after their pets and a place to discard the waste. Please show picture 10. That's an example of the pet waste station we'd like to erect in different places. Can conservation buy them? 4, we've talked to people about dumping yard waste in the marsh, and we're devising ways to educate the neighborhood further. 5, we're developing plans to remove the hardened piles of debris and to get the junk and abandoned houses out of the marsh. 6, we're developing plans for Ship Shape Day to remove the fiberglass boat, the wall, and a tire stuck in the marsh. 7, we're trying to find a solution for the problem of storm sand and debris that comes over the seawall, rockets between the houses on Turner Road, and piles up all over the marsh. Maybe you can tell us something about the rules governing storm cleanup. And then 8, we're asking the Scituate Beach Association to reduce encroachment into the wetlands for its parking and sports operations. We proposed a joint effort to remove fill and replant the back of the SBA parking lot on Otis Road. We intend to propose that they stop mowing so deeply into the marsh for playing fields at Turner and Otis. At a recent select board meeting, they said they were willing to meet with us. We hope to increase awareness of all the marshes in Scituate so that the town will protect them and not allow them to be further degraded. We welcome your support and guidance of our grassroots efforts. We hope to meet with you often. Thank you.
Ella, thanks for summarizing that all up in that period of time. You should help other people put together their presentations. What I'd like to do is just kind of go around the members. It's too bad we don't have more of the members here this evening, but they can watch this. So kind of like to open this up to commission members with any questions that they have. And also Amy, our agent as well. So maybe Richard, do you want to comment? Or
I think this is really a terrific start to a huge problem, not only there, but throughout the town. And the only thing specifically I could comment on is I wish you really good luck with getting the sand not to go into the marsh. In where I am in Humrock, there's a similar problem of sand overrunning and running into the river, which runs into the marsh. And the town does a decent job of not letting sand go that way as much as possible, but they don't return it to the beach, to just leave it in people's yards. And consequently, sometimes the people decide that they've got to get rid of it a different way. And at least to date, the town has not been putting it back on the beach, which would be much more ideal. And I don't know if that can be changed or if that would work for the marsh there. But that's one issue that's not been solved down here, and it does not help any marshes anywhere in town, and certainly it looks like it doesn't help yours. But that's one thing that somewhere along the line, I think we have to really work on to see if we can get the stuff that can be put back on the beach, but at least not allowed to go into the marshes.
thanks, Richard.
Yep.
Penny?
Okay, well, first, the ball field has been there since I was a child. And it's one spot for kids to play
Right.
in that whole area. So I don't see, I mean,
Well, it seems that the ball field, the basketball court is, but the rest of that ball field is is over an estuary that is trying to come up from below. And it's almost always wet. Sometimes it's not wet for a moment. And I know the SBA has put fill in there to try to make it unwet. But then the estuary has, because if in one of the slides, you will see the estuary is very clear on that one slide. It's still there. It's a freshwater estuary that feeds into the marsh. But, we're willing to work with them. We understand that they want us, but they're cutting further and further into the marsh and not finding dry land as they cut and cut and cut.
okay, well, I can understand that, but I do feel as though the field and the basketball court really need to stay there.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
like I said, I've been in Scituate since 1950, and that field has been there
Yeah.
since
Right.
before I came. And my brothers played Little League down there, so forth and so on. That being said, I think though with the sand, that's just kind of Mother Nature doing her things. And eventually it is going to take over the marsh. Because the beaches, the erosion is coming in. And we can put it back on the beach all we want, but eventually all those houses and everything will be gone there because the ocean wants to come in. And I understand it is a problem. Yes, I would like to see it, you know, kept clean, what marsh there is there. And you really do have to work with the private ownership problem down there. I mean, it isn't town-owned land. So you really have to make friends.
Oh, we
Right,
are
we're
friendly.
working on
We
that.
are friendly
Yeah,
with our
yeah,
neighbors.
yeah.
That's not the issue. The issue is that we know the ocean is coming for us.
Yeah.
We know the ocean is coming for our houses. We're trying to allow the marsh to exist for as long
Yeah.
as it can to
I
protect
understand that.
people's homes, our neighbors, these very people you're talking about. So that's really our goal. And I mean, the very fact that houses were built on the dunes, my house, for one, I feel like I should
Yeah.
just knock it down because
Yeah.
there is, you know, no
Well,
one.
we didn't know what we know today.
That's right. We didn't
When
know
all
what we
this
know
was
today.
developed.
Yeah,
And
it's
also
just
the
done-
climate has changed.
Well,
So,
that too, but today, no, we never should have allowed
right.
buildings that close to the ocean back when they were built.
That's right.
But saying that, I think this is a good effort you're putting in, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank
And
you.
thank you.
the big thing is to get the private property to
Right,
be friendly to you and to educate the people that are leaving or throwing stuff into the marsh.
Yeah,
right.
You know, we had the problem down in front of the Toll Brothers project, that big marsh, and we made toll.
Mhm.
Well, part of our mitigation with them was that they had to go in and clean that marsh out, and that had washing machines, refrigerators. I mean, God only knows the stuff that was in there.
yeah.
And so it is clean, and I hope it stays clean, but it's up to the public. It isn't dumping ground. We
Right.
have a dump. It's not that far away. Take it down there, you know? So,
Oh, we've had appliances in Sand Hills Marsh too.
yeah, no, I'm sure you have. But it's just unfortunate that people, I mean, I don't know where they get the idea. It's okay to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Good luck, ladies. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan.
Brendan, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think this is a great start. I like hearing that, clean out, our marshes. That's I think I'm glad that you're doing it. And hopefully,
I mean, marshes are the new
Well,
carbon
yeah.
centers too for climate change. And it's not just our marsh. We're concerned about all the marshes. and
right,
making
all
sure-
1,600
100
acres of
acres.
marsh.
Making sure they're healthy and supply enough carbon to the rest of, to the environment. Anyway, whatever. Thank you.
That's great. And I have no questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. Amy? You're, there we
So
go.
anyways, I did, invite this group in to just share with you what they're working on.
Thank you.
It was slightly complicated by the ownership of the property, but,
Hmm.
and also went through the fact that we can facilitate through maybe some administrative permits, getting some of the bigger trash out of there.
Right.
But if there's equipment to be gone in there or something like that, it's a little more complicated, then it would be a permitting, like a meeting, like the RDA or something.
Right.
Yes, we're going to use all our diplomacy with all our property owners. We already are.
Sure.
Excellent.
Might just interject a little bit here, and again, we, most of the time we're having a meeting where folks are looking to build something or alter something for their private property or whatever. So, we, the commission, have projects we're trying to move on as well with open space and promote that sort of thing. So it's really encouraging to see folks out there bringing the awareness that's needed. And it's not easy because you can see this and how important it is, and it seems worldwide, or at least there's been a good initiative to make these improvements. So I would encourage you to keep that going forward. There's always stumbling blocks. One of the things that might be helpful, we already have a little information on, is several years ago, Musquashkett Pond was really degraded. We were seeing a lot of different insects and things that really shouldn't have been in there. And part of that problem was the floodgates, and trying to manage that water in a certain fashion wasn't the correct thing to do. And by making some changes there, allowing tidal water to come in and out, move freely, and taking down some barriers that were put up, that has helped Musquashkett Pond tremendously. And there's still phragmites and there's still some things that are there, but the quality of that area has improved significantly. And so I do think you're onto something in trying to get at least some salt water back into that area.
Right. And the tide gate, what are they called though? The tide gate flappers, they've been replaced by DPW. And so when we put in the water loggers in May, that's when we will know if it's working. And we've been in touch with the engineers in DPW.
That's great. No, I think that's a positive thing. The overwash problem is an issue. And I think after the Storm Riley, this commission sat down with folks from different agencies. There was a lot of overwash onto the marshes at Kent Street. It washed over Peggotty Beach, and a lot of sand and stone went onto the marshes. As Richard spoke about down in Hummerock, that often happens. We actually approached DEP and different state agencies saying, hey, let's reclaim that material. It's smothering the marsh, and with the equipment today, we can do that without doing any harm to the marsh, and we could reclaim that. And we were basically told no, that's a naturally occurring event, and that in the cases of barrier beaches and other things, we shouldn't be altering that, which in places where it doesn't make it into the sand and rocks and things don't make it in the marsh, it'd be great if the DPW or private folks could gather that up and get it back onto the beach where we really need it. But it was frustrating to be thinking we were trying to do something positive, and we were told, forget about it. Don't even think about trying to grab that.
Right.
The good news is they may be changing the regulations so that what you want to do there, or what you wanted to do there, can actually be done. I was told by somebody at DEP.
I think that would be helpful. So that's that's just one of the little things that we've watched. To your point, I think it's Penny's point. We'd like to see things for youth, for the fields, the playing on them, the use of that, I think is important to the neighborhood. At the same time, a lot of these fields were pretty informal, and over time, folks have tried to make them a little more glorified than maybe they need to be. kids can still have a good
And a little
time on it.
larger than they need to be.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm, everybody's got their interests. And I do think that hopefully people can look at both sides of this and say, geez, we can
Right.
use this,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be
They don't have to
pristine.
go so far in to
Yep.
the mark. Yeah.
And I think that's an important aspect to look at. And that's something that the commission can weigh in on. And,
Okay.
we can discuss that with the property owners or whatever.
That would be helpful.
Several years ago, the Scituate Scouts during the Ship Shape Day, one of the scouts took on the marsh between 10th Ave and 6th or something like that. And they had a huge number of young people in there. I think they filled like 3 10-wheeler loads with
Oh.
with debris of all kinds. I mean, some of the stuff was hard to get out of there, but there was just mountains of it. They had to use an excavator to load the dump trucks. There was so much.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of damage that happens with that, but Mother Nature fixes itself pretty well if it gets some help. And it would be great if you could work with
Yeah.
the folks that own it and say, hey, we want to get all the junk out of there.
Yeah,
And-
I mean,
and-
we're trying to recruit young people with muscles.
Yep.
Because we can't all do it. And young people and college students and high school students. So yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah. If you can make it fun for them in some way, a
Hmm.
little bit of social gathering or whatever. Maybe you could, I don't know. Food always works too. Some pizza helps a lot. But I think that would be I used to, and people see that when you have a pile of junk and you can get some photographs and say, look what we just pulled out of here.
Yeah.
So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah,
And as Amy said, we can take a look at these. Some of these things we should just know what's going on and the process. We have minor activities permits for simple things that don't cause any issues. If it's a little bit more work and we think it needs a little more guidance, we can do a simple RDA or something like that if it's needed. So it's just staying in touch with Amy and Jen on the
Okay.
projects is a good idea. And then, we'll do our best to support your initiative as well.
okay, okay.
Thank
think-
you.
Thank you. That's
And please
great.
keep us updated,
Oh, sure.
a letter or an email or
will.
something would
We
be
will.
super. And I'm glad to see you've got so many folks that really take a strong interest in this. I think it's
Yeah,
wonderful.
we're reaching out to more people in the neighborhood. I mean, we need lots of people to be involved in this, not just our little group.
Sure.
Our
Well,
group isn't little, but we need more people.
Yep.
Yeah.
but I think there's already some history with a lot of these things that we have information on, and maybe that can help with some of the things that you're doing. So,
Okay.
great.
Good.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
much.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
You have a wonderful
Thank you.
evening. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Night. Oh, that's great. Okay. 817 Country Way. This was continued and the applicant wants to continue it again.
Yes, to June 6th.
So do I have a motion to continue 817
June
Country
5th.
Way?
5.
I'm sorry,
It
what's,
says June,
June
oh, June
5th.
5th, I'm sorry. I'll make a motion that we continue 817 Country Way to June 5th.
okay, Penny's made the motion, or a second.
I'll second it.
Richard, all in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Okay, and then we have
The
Central
fourth.
Avenue, Humrock.
I'll make a motion to continue Central Ave, Northern Humrock, Fourth Cliff to May 1st.
Second,
Second from Penny, all in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. 162 Central Ave. Let's see, I gotta read this one.
Yep.
So on April 24th at 6 p.m. The Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 3070 the Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Kevin and Teresa Tenney for work related to raising and rebuilding a single-family dwelling at location 162 Central Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Thank you.
Information, access to virtual meetings available on the agenda posted on the town website. And we have Jed.
Yes, good evening. Jed Hanna with Atlantic Coast Engineering. Can everybody hear me okay?
We got you. Thanks, Jed.
Okay, great. I just wanted to confirm, we did have to make a plan update, which was revised on March 29th and resent via email and hard copy. Okay, great. Yeah, looks like we have the correct one. I just wanted to confirm that before I started, the presentation. Thank you. Looks like we're good. Okay, so this is a single family dwelling. It was built in 1954, so it's approximately 70 years old. It's been in the family for a long time. It's very dated and, exposed to all the conditions in Hummerock that the homes are exposed to. It's land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's barrier beach, and it's in the FEMA VE 15 zone. The proposed finished floor elevation, again, it's VE 15. We're planning for elevation 18.0 with wood piles spaced at 8 foot on center. As you can probably see on the proposed, if we zoom in, there's several geometric restrictions due to the proximity to Central Ave, and then the septic system, which is in the back, both the leaching field, the septic tank, and the rest of the system. So we ended up having to basically reduce the depth of the proposed house, which is why we had to revise this. So we're now compliant with zoning setbacks, whereby we're not further proposing any more nonconformities. So that was the reason for the change. We also provided mitigation for this new proposed home in the form of Cultex with crushed stone on the left and right side of the property, with downspouts that will drain to those Cultex. We also will need a ZBA permit because of the pre-existing non-conforming lot size and the setbacks. But overall, it's a significant improvement to an older home. And as I stated before, it's proposed to be pile supported along with some decks around the side. We did not, because of the geometric restrictions and having to go for you folks and the ZBA, we haven't yet had the structurals done, but we have had preliminary discussions and layout, and we've done several of these in the past. So we're comfortable with the pile spacing and the number of them that are needed. I could go over the pervious impervious table in the bottom left if you want. But other than that, I'd be happy to open up to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Why don't you just give us the your input on the pervious and impervious areas, Chad?
Sure. So as you can see on the bottom left, the existing total impervious is 1,065. The proposed is 1,270. So it's a proposed net increase of 205 approximately square feet. So we've more than mitigated that with capturing the roof runoff, which will drain to the Cultex on the left and the right side. And that's really it, I guess. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Oh, one other thing, sorry. For the decks, we are proposing precast concrete Bigfoots versus, poured in place concrete. Just given the area and the nature of the soils there, we thought that would be best suited, but we'd be happy to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Um,
Or actually, Amy, do you want to weigh in first?
better.
I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, this is, raise rebuild on Barrier Beach, Coastal Dune, Velocity Zone. And I think this would be something that we can condition, although we do not have a set of the structural plans yet, which we would like. And otherwise, I have no comments.
Okay. So Richard,
Well, overall, I think it's definitely an improvement. I kind of know the house. The one thing I cannot recall, and I should because it's not that far from me really, is the drive in front already paved?
That's proposed.
I know it says proposed. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
recall. I can't recall if it's already paved.
It looks like it's concrete or something, but as much impervious as we can get out of there would be the best.
Well,
idea.
that's where I'm going, Amy. If it's, I mean, obviously, if it's already there.
Yeah,
I
but it's
suppose
already
there's not much we
there,
could do,
looks
but
like, yeah.
well, that's not true because you've got a much larger area in this house. So
Concrete.
they're proposing to have a much larger area covered by the house. So, I mean, to request that concrete not go back there, that it could be seashells or something else, I think is
Well, that's-
reasonable.
that's absolutely where I'm going with it. And of course, if it's not there in the first place, I really wouldn't like to see it go there. If it is there, then I suppose there's an argument, but I still wouldn't like to see it there.
Okay.
The rest of it, I don't have a problem with. In fact, I think it's a pretty good plan for a very tight area between the two streets and looks like a real improvement.
Thank you,
That,
Richard.
the concrete drive, I have an issue with.
Thank you. Penny,
No, I don't have any questions, Frank.
Brendan,
I kind of agree with Richard about the concrete drive. I wish it wouldn't be there. I know that it is there, so but otherwise I'm not seeing anything else I have questions about.
okay, thank you. Do we have anyone in the audience for this?
Seeing no hands raised.
Okay, Jed, I have a few things. You mentioned using Bigfoots, and I'm not sure that that's what we would typically allow. I don't know if they can be gotten deep enough to deal with scour. I mean, you're proposing to use quite a few of them to support the decks. Typically, the decks are still supported with driven piles. If I'm Amy, I don't ever remember like switching things up. Maybe
Yeah,
just
no, I had made that comment. Yeah, it should be all just driven wooden piles in this location for sure.
I'm not sure they need to be at the stairs necessarily. Or at least all the ones on the stairs. You've got half a dozen
7,
at
6,
each stairway, but I think they do need to be driven piles to support the decks, Jed.
Okay,
And that should get into that structural plan. And then it is a larger footprint, the house. When you on your chart for existing and proposed, it looks like there's actually a reduction of a couple hundred square feet in pervious area. But I just had a discussion with Craig DeCesar from DEP about larger buildings, and they're still looking at this area. That house, although it sits on piles and is open underneath, creates a larger impervious area. And I think if the folks are looking to increase that, both with the house and the additional decks that you're proposing, that they could come up with an alternate for the driveway. And it should be something that's not solid, whether it's stone or seashells or some other sort of thing. But I think if we're going to look to allow them to add that much footprint to that area, I don't think it's unrealistic for the commission to look for that. is there any vegetation growing on this lot now, like where the leach field is and whatnot? Is there any grass or?
There's
Shrub.
minimal, sure, so there's minimal vegetation and grass. I mean, there is some, but you know, it's kind of
It's a tough
heavy,
spot to grow
it's a
things.
tough spot, exactly. It's, you know, a lot of wind driven rain and such, and yeah, there isn't a lot of vegetation, but there is a little bit. And to your point about the driveway, I can certainly understand the position there, and I'm sure the owners would be amenable to a pervious solution.
Richard, you're
Yep.
familiar with the area. Is there any possibility that like beach grass or any other kind of hardy kind of material could work? And then I don't know what
Yes,
exists.
the answer is yes, and there are more and more people that are trying to do, actually, including my wife and I. But there's more and more houses down here that are starting to pull in some beach type grass, and it seems to work well in this area. As you might imagine, you got water on both sides, and it's very moist, and it works out pretty well. So yes, and in terms of the driveway, the thing that seems to work the best are crushed shells, and I think that's because if they do wash, they usually wash into the river, and at least the shells are not really all as bad as stones are or sand is. So
Gotcha.
that's it. But yes, beach grass does work down here.
Okay, so I think that infiltrators are something that could be useful. Although, you know, quite honestly, I'd rather see the folks try to develop more like a beach grass or duney kind of. Do these, Amy, the stone trenches, are they something that's typically allowed in this area?
No,
I didn't think so. I think, Jed, you know, quite honestly, where it's all sand and whatnot, I'd rather see your clients take the money that they would have spent on these things and
The beach grass.
try to do more for plantings and stabilize that than worry so much about the infiltrators myself.
Sure, I mean, we're just trying to, you know, follow the bylaw, which is, you know, to minimize the impervious, and being that the soils there are very sandy and rocky, that they're very porous.
Right.
And so these Cultex work well there and meet the requirements of the bylaw.
Amy, do they need that for stormwater or anything? Is that a requirement on this site?
I don't think so.
Right.
I mean, if we're to further the discussion, if we're proposing to delete so a portion of the existing driveway is concrete, and then underneath adjacent to the existing house is not concrete. So if we're proposing to make the existing driveway pervious, the table will be well below the existing impervious amount with the proposed. So we could
Right.
certainly take the Cultex out, and I think that the owners would be fine with that.
Okay, I think if those personally, I think if they were not there, you know, maybe you need a little bit of an asphalt apron so that your driveway doesn't get pushed away during cleanups or snow removal. But, you know, if there was a small apron that came off of Central Ave 3 or 4 feet, but went into the shelled kind of parking area, and then maybe you could show like a planting area or something with some grasses that would work in that location. I think that would be something the commission would be pretty favorable with. Anybody else want to chime in?
I'll just reiterate one thing, Frank, on the backside where the leaching field is and towards Atlantic Drive, many of the people on Atlantic Drive have a lot of beach grass
Okay.
in their backyard on that side of the street too.
So maybe you guys could take a look at that, Jed, and see what would work there. I think
Yeah,
that'd be
absolutely. We could add some plantings.
okay.
So
All right.
Frank, are you thinking that you want to close
Yeah.
with a revised plan, or we want to get a revised plan and structurals before we close this?
Well, I think it would be good to get the structural showing the
Yeah, I think you
piles
need that.
in all those locations, and then change the drawing on the driveway, removal of the Cultex and show an area that's vegetated. Can we just do them? Can they go to we have a meeting again real quick, don't we?
Next Monday.
So is it feasible to think Jed could get that information in and we could close it next
Well,
meeting?
I guess, Jed, what's the status of the structural plans?
Yeah, so we're holding off, subject to having the meeting with you folks and then the ZBA to make sure that there's going to be no changes instead of having 2 or 3 sets of revisions. So, updating the civil plan, that wouldn't be a problem. The structurals would be a ways out to get those. So if it's reasonable to condition the order of conditions, if we get a favorable vote, having a condition that, prior to construction, Scituate Conservation Commission will require receipt of structural drawings. I'm sure the ZBA and of course the building department will require that anyway. That would just be my suggestion.
Okay, so why don't you make the changes on this plan that we discussed tonight?
Sure.
With regards to driveway, the Cultex coming out, can eliminate the notes on the Bigfoot sonotubes. At least supporting the decks. I don't think there's a reason that you wouldn't have them for the stairs or some sort of support, but and then some sort of vegetation. Maybe you could give us an idea of what you're going to plant and how much you're going to plant. And if we continue this to the, is it the 1st or?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. I think we should continue it further out and get a draft of the structurals to include in the orders.
Well, what's the meeting after, the 15th?
Oh, our meetings, we go May 1st and 15th, and then we go to June 6th. But I'm
I
just
want to go to June.
think I think that this meeting and the feedback that the applicants had with the Elevate, that they will get orders with conditions for a driven wooden pile replacement home. But I think you do want to close it with the right documentation that we can attach, because I know it's subject that puts the building commissioner in a tough spot if he doesn't have conditioned structural plans.
So Jed, do you think you could have structurals by what are we talking, the 15th?
15th?
Yeah, I think that's realistic.
Okay. So why don't you make note of that and let's get a motion to continue to the
I'll make a
15th.
motion to continue 162 Central Avenue to May 15th.
That was
2023.
Richard,
is.
second
Second.
by Penny. All in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Okay, great.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. 7 Whittier Drive.
Yay.
Read the public hearing notice.
Yep. Fishing it out here. On April 24th, during the 6 p.m. meeting, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Barbara Foster for a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands bylaws for activity related to septic repair for a single-family dwelling at location, excuse me, 7 Whittier Drive, Scituate. Mass abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access the meeting will be available on the agenda posted on the town website. So, Mr. Morse? or
Yes.
Somebody from their office, like Greg?
Greg's here.
Thank you. This is Greg Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering, representing the property owner Barbara Foster. As was just read into the record, this is a RDA for a septic system upgrade project at number 7 Whittier Drive. Looking at the plan, Whittier Drive is on the right-hand side. The wetlands at the site is the line in blue on the left-hand side of the plan. Those were delineated by John Zimmer, professional wetland scientist of South River Environmental. Off of the wetlands in red is the 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer in green. The existing home here has a failed septic system in the backyard inside the 50-foot buffer zone. The proposal here is to build a new septic system. The new tanks in the new leaching field are outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. The setback to the tanks is 51.2 feet, and the setback to the leaching field is 64.5. The only work required inside the 50-foot buffer zone is the connection from the pipe where it exits the house to the new septic tank. All of the work proposed is in existing lawn area. There is one tree that we would have to cut down for this. Again, this is a septic system repair project. We have an erosion control barrier proposed between the limit of work and the resource. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Greg. Amy?
Looking good.
Yeah, so I think this, obviously we'd like to see the failed septic system upgraded, and it would appear to meet the requirements of a negative finding. Although for purposes of home building, I don't think we're not challenging or accepting the wetland line as shown on the plan, which is usually something we put in that permit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Brendan?
I have no questions. Looks good.
Richard?
Nope, I'm good.
Penny?
Very good.
Anybody in the audience? No,
Seeing none.
I don't see that it would go anywhere else, and it seems like a good addition, and I know there's a couple of people very anxious to see this get approved. So I'll take a motion.
Make a motion for -3.
That's Penny, second.
I'll second that, Brendan.
Brendan, all in favor, Richard
Yes, I am.
and Frank, yes. Great, thank you. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Greg, are you staying with us for
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you. 12 Concord Street. I gotta read this. On April 24th, 2023, during the 6 p.m. meeting, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of, where did I put that?
Stephen Campbell.
Well, no, I got Barbara Foster's name here again.
No, it's Stephen Campbell,
Stephen Campbell and
Rockwood.
Rockwood Designs.
For Stephen Campbell,
Rockwood
for
Design.
determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Act, Scituate Wetlands bylaws, activities related to extending a deck, 2 new footings, and stairs for a single-family dwelling at location 12 Concord Street, Scituate, Mass. About as other interested parties are invited to attend. Information to access the meeting was available on the agenda posted on the town website. Okay, we have maybe somebody from Rockwood.
Maybe not.
I'm unmuting Dick, so I think to stick Rockwood.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
There you go. Yeah, so this is Dick Rockwood, Rockwood Design. I was helping the Campbells to sort out their deck addition. This is a plan that was drawn some years ago when the house was built. It was a Bob Profit plan, BET Engineering, who, and Bob is pretty much retired these days. We already have a room on the back of the house that exists towards the riverside, and there's also a deck that's already there. What they wanted to do is extend the deck parallel to the river, not towards it, and that's that 12 by 14 deck area. So this photo, we're going to go to the left of this, right in that area. Thank you. And extend the deck. The whole house and the deck is on concrete piers. That was done years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. I did this house myself. So we were just proposing to put a couple of precast, if I may, to extend the 14-foot deck onto this. Which I think you also have my plan.
Yep.
That I had done.
Got it.
So
Okay,
we're not getting any closer to the marsh or the river. You know, I just thought it was a hardship to have to go get a total brand new survey and wetland. You know, nothing's really changed there. A lot of it's lawn right up until where the marsh is. Nothing's changed in years on this house. It's just a family summer cottage. And was hoping that the board would just allow this as an RDA.
okay. Amy, thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Dick. Yeah, so based on the number of footings and the scope of work, it doesn't appear that this project would trigger the substantial improvement clause and the elevate requirements under FEMA, but and it's something that you would condition as an RDA or a negative finding in this location.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Richard?
I
Yes.
just walked over there the other day and I know the house a little bit. It makes perfect sense, actually. And Dick described it perfectly. It's not going any closer to the river. It's just on the back of the house. It's no problem that I can see.
Okay. Penny,
Looks good to me.
Brendan,
I have no questions.
anybody in the audience? You didn't draw a crowd.
Seeing none,
Sorry.
Looks good.
I've done
Okay,
that plenty of other times. It's okay.
that's it.
Sometimes the
right, I'll-
crowds are bad.
And we don't have anybody in the audience on this, so I'll take a motion.
I make a motion for a -3.
I'll second it.
Second from Richard, all in
Yep.
favor, Brendan,
Yes.
Frank, yes. Great,
All right. Thank you all.
thank
Have
you
a
very
good
much.
evening.
Have a good night. Man Hill Road, this is for the gas company. On April 24th, during the 6 p.m. meeting, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Eversource Gas of Massachusetts for determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and Scituate Wetlands Bylaw for activities related to installing gap closure, new main, within the existing paved surface of Man Hill Road. Scituate abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. The information to access this meeting is available on the agenda posted on the town website. So do we have anybody on for,
Hello, my name is Dorothy Lawrence. I'm with VHB and I'm here for this. Also with me is Jennifer Bottaro from Eversource.
great, good evening.
Hello, how's everybody doing tonight?
Great, thanks.
Oh,
Well,
good.
But yeah,
So I'll run through this really quickly and then just to saving everybody some time. Essentially what it's going to be is the installation of what's referred to as a gap closure, and it's new gas main that basically connects to existing gas mains. So currently there's gas main going down Fieldstone Road and then gas main going down Anaquin Road, Anaquina, road, which is the road to the south that's unlabeled. And then they'll install basically approximately 400 linear feet of new gas main that will connect those two existing mains. It's approximately 8 inches of gas main being installed. The resource areas we're in are the 100-foot buffer zone and then the 50-foot buffer strip. We had the wetlands delineated, which are pictured sort of in this photo to the right. The red line represents the gas main, and then the sort of like hot pink line represents the erosion controls. The gas main will be installed using the open trench method, which is approximately 2 to 3 feet wide, 3 to 4 feet deep, just excavated with an excavator, and they essentially open up what they can close in a day. They reuse 2/3 of the material in the trench, and then 1/3 is removed from site and disposed in a legal manner. And then they essentially either repave it or they'll put like sort of a metal steel. I'm sure we've all driven over them over sort of the gap before it's repaved so that people can continue to use the travel surface when they're completing their work for the day. And that's basically the gist of it. Does anyone have any questions?
Amy?
yeah, so thank you. this would be something consistent with a negative finding. And also, again, like with the Whittier, where we won't challenge or accept your wetland line, but it does appear that the work is within jurisdictional radius. So thank you for coming in, and Eversource strict BMPs for their roadwork projects, utility replacement improvement projects. So I think we're good to go.
Okay. Penny,
Nope, I'm fine.
Brendan,
I'm good.
Richard,
Just curious as to when this would be done and what would the duration of the work be?
I would say probably, I want to say like late July. Anticipated start date is in a couple weeks. And it would probably take roughly a month. I might be a little bit it might take a little bit less than that. It's just like sort of like a smaller portion, but the tie-in sometimes can take an extended time period. But I would say roughly a month would be.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the information.
Sure.
and do we ask if there was anybody in the audience? I don't remember.
No.
Okay. You know what I do like on this plan is the different color codings. It'd be great if we could get applicants to color things like existing house and proposed dwelling and all those different features. If they were able to do those in different colors when we're looking at a plan,
Really helps.
think about that. Oftentimes we're looking at some of these projects trying to decipher what's existing and what's proposed and these different things. And if they could be done in colors, that would be super. Just to not to hold you up, but that's
I appreciate the compliment. I definitely try to make them as readable as possible. And I definitely enjoy the color coding components of it. But I think a lot of times that you guys are looking at plan sets, this one is done on, I had done on GIS. So
right. But if there was a plan, when we get a plan set and we're trying to look at what's existing and what's proposed, and it's kind of hard to sort it out. If they were colored coded to that, it would
for sure.
No.
I mean, I've done it on plan sets before. I've colored them in with highlighters.
Got it. All right.
That's helpful.
All right. Well, we won't hold things up, but
Moving on,
thank you.
Frank,
So
moving on.
I need a motion
I make a motion for -3.
and a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Richard
Yes, I am.
and Frank, yes. Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank
You
you.
too.
You too.
Joy.
So did I continue Fourth Cliff?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't remember voting that.
We did.
We
I guess
did.
no than now.
You might have missed it, but we did.
Okay, so now we're gonna go right into the administrative items, people. We have actually letter A is a request. It's just the administrative request to see whether or not you would take this project back as an amendment to existing orders. The address is 208 CJC Pacheco property, and I believe Greg Morse is on the line to maybe talk about it, so I'm going to unmute Greg.
Do we have a plan for that?
Yes, we do. And Jenna, you can share a plan if you can, please.
Thank you. For the record again, this is Greg Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. Also with me tonight is attorney William Eades from Drohan, Taccio and Morgan. And I believe the applicant Sean Pacheco is on the call as well. This is a request at 208 CJC Highway, property owned by Sean Pacheco. We had filed a notice of intent a little over a year ago to construct a boathouse at the site, the boathouse project. Since then, as you're aware, there was some clearing on the site. There was an enforcement order issued. Mr. Pacheco has complied with his mitigation requirements to comply with the enforcement order. He's done the plantings. He's in the process of having those plantings analyzed by a wetland scientist to make sure that they survive to the winter. But now it's time to move on with the boathouse project. And what we've realized over time is that he wants to build a slightly different boathouse. It's 1 story in size versus what was approved was a 2-story building. It's also further from the wetlands than what was approved. The boathouse that's proposed would be a single story. It would be 89 feet from the salt marsh, whereas what you had approved was a 2-story building that was 65 feet from the salt marsh. The limit of work remains the same with either project. The erosion control barrier remains the same with both projects. And again, all mitigation from former issues at this site, are all still in effect. All the plantings would still go in or have gone in at this point. But it's simply to amend the order of conditions to allow the new boathouse location, again, being further away and being slightly different configuration. But I turn it over to you,
Bigger.
Commission.
Amy,
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess you could go either way on this. I could probably make a case for both. Taking it as a new notice of intent or amending these orders to accept a new site plan. Honestly, it is really up to you. Either way, the review is largely the same. It's gonna be advertised as a legal notice and advertised for a public hearing for the next available date. And recordable orders would come out of it. So.
For this evening, we're not talking about an amendment. This is a discussion about whether it should be an amendment or it should be.
Correct. This is just a decision of whether we advertise it
West.
as a request to amend and keep the existing DEP file number, or you tell them you'd rather make it a different project and come in as a new notice of intent. And then they would just file the notice of intent form instead, and it would be a brand new review.
Okay.
But as a brand new review, it wouldn't mean you'd have to update the resource areas, you know what I mean? You could rely on them as depicted. It would just possibly make it cleaner. I don't know this, but then on the other hand, I think it makes sense to keep it all as one still, because these orders also are the stormwater permit for the whole property, which we haven't received an as-built for the main house, but I'm gonna say that, or at least question Greg as to whether all the infiltrator trenches are in to meet the stormwater permit. Because that was separate from the orders, really. Although it was in the permit, it's separate by law,
Okay. Penny?
No, I'm fine with it as an amendment.
Okay. Richard?
I'm fine with it as an amendment, especially based on what Amy
We
said,
went
that
through.
it's still got to be advertised and everything. I'm fine with it as an
Yeah.
amendment.
Brendan?
I'm also fine with it as an amendment.
Amy, a few questions, and then I got some from Craig. So with an amended order, is there a butter notification as well as all the advertising and notification is the same, whether it's an NOI or an amendment?
Yes.
Yes, it's all the same. It's a legal ad in the newspaper. It's a butter notifications. So it's the same process for that.
Okay.
And to answer Amy's question earlier, yes, all of the stormwater, including the subsurface drainage, has all been installed associated with the house and stormwater permit to date. We just haven't closed it out because this portion of the project hasn't been built yet, but that has all been done and complied with.
Am I looking at this correctly? Is the footprint of this project larger than what was proposed before?
Yes.
The building is slightly larger in size, yes. but it's been reduced to a single story versus a two-story.
But it has a bigger footprint.
Yes, bigger footprint.
Well, I guess we'll discuss all of that stuff when they come back for the amendment. So this is
Right.
just, so I guess an amendment hearing is probably the right venue to take.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't even need to vote that, right? We're just going to give you some direction.
I
I
believe
would
you,
vote it.
Okay,
We'll vote it.
I'll make a motion that we, I don't know.
Approve the request for the amendment.
Yeah, there you go, Richard.
Just trying to help out here, Penny.
Yes, you are.
approve the
Thank you.
request that the applicant submit an amended order for
Amendment
this
for- yeah.
amendment to make the changes that they're looking for
I
on this
second
project.
whatever you want to use.
That
Alright.
sounds good.
Okay. So I have a motion, a second from Richard. All
Yep.
in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Thank you.
thank you. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Thanks. We had already submitted the request for amendment letter in the amendment plan. Can we schedule a date that this would be on so that we can move forward with the abutter notice and legal ads? Can we schedule the May 15th meeting would give us enough time? Would that be possible?
What's your,
Greg, we'll take a look at it and we'll get back to you this week on a date.
Okay,
all right.
thank you.
I get you.
Thank
Try
you.
to move
Greg.
it, try to keep it moving along. Thanks a lot. Certificate of compliance for 83 and 83R Glades.
It's in.
Oh,
process.
yeah, so I just was gonna give you an update on that. It's in process, waiting for planting report on those. Those were the multifamilies that were permitted down in Minot
Uh,
Yeah.
area.
Yep.
Hope development. And anyway, so we're not gonna do anything with those. And then enforcement. We do have the enforcement order and wondering if you want to vote to ratify that. And also just the update on finding somebody to take a look at the information, like a peer review type person to take a look at the information put together by the applicant in support of their structure. And I am having some pretty good success finding some people.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
No, I think it's important. I know that you were having a hard time with some of the people that have come and gone from the coastal geologists, but it would be great to get somebody on this. And you have issued an enforcement order already, right?
But we have to ratify it. So I'm gonna make a motion, Frank, to ratify the enforcement order on 67 Collier.
Okay,
Second it.
second from Richard, all in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Amy, were there any fines associated with that?
No, you had not addressed that yet, but that can be done separately. Like it's a different piece of paper from the enforcement order, although oftentimes I put it in a letter, summarizing it. So if you want to discuss that.
Well, I personally think there should be fines levied on that one. I mean, I look back at some of our notes and discussion, and at the time that this project was conditioned, the applicant had requested some sort of wall there, and we had told them no.
And they did it anyways.
So,
I mean, it was very clear, Frank, what they were supposed to do.
yeah,
And they did what they wanted to do. So they should pay the price. I say fine them.
how do you base that, Amy? Is there some formula?
Well, we don't really have a formula per se, but the state does, and the state's fines are pretty hefty when they get
Good.
involved. You know, I mean, this is resource area, it's coastal bank. There's 2 coastal banks out there, and this was deliberately built, yeah. In the coastal bank where the orders did not approve, so, I mean, I think you could just send a message with a fine.
Okay, do we have to vote an amount, or do you take a look at that and kind of come up with something that's consistent with others?
Yeah, I would think I would take a look.
If you could do that, if you need to vote that, we could do that at the next meeting, the sum of the fine, if that's needed, but I think we should, you know, we obviously want to be consistent with other things that we have fined for in the past, but
Well,
Yeah,
so
we-
fining, goes both ways too. I mean, I agree that fining sends a message that this is not, there's under no circumstances is this allowed to be, looking for after the fact approval for something that was discussed and specifically disallowed on this bank. But on the other hand, I mean, you do want to have a growing relationship with these people that hopefully will lead to the wall coming down. So, by sending fines, you could be sending a little bit of a.
I
ripple
mean, I
impact.
think we had a discussion with them at the last meeting, and that we're going to move forward and get a coastal geologist. But I guess the more I looked at this and the more I looked at what we had discussed when we were at the meeting, it was really pretty clear that that wasn't supposed to happen. And I mean, they could have either appealed our decision or they could have come back and requested an amendment, but they didn't do either. They just decided to build this wall and then see what would happen.
I think
And
we
and
need
I
to
think that's
fine.
pretty egregious. So
Yep.
I guess I don't have a problem.
We also need to send a
I mean, we've
message.
had discussions with neighbors out there that have looked for similar things and we've denied that. So that's pretty frustrating when other folks have looked to do the same thing and have been told no. And then someone builds a brand new place.
I think we need to fine. I don't think there's any question.
Mhm.
So maybe you could, before the next meeting, you could just send us something with what you think is appropriate. We can talk about that and get that
Okay,
in action. All right. And whether the fine should have started from when it was built or when we voted or whatever, we can talk about that.
sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Order of conditions for 48 Jericho Road.
Yeah, so you all received a copy of the draft orders for both of these properties, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yep.
And so I know that one of the things that you had discussed on Jericho Road was the project is a parking lot redo with a couple of structures on it and then a force main connection to the sewer. But anyways, and so a couple of project ideas were floated on how you might get some stormwater improvements. And so one was at the lot across from the town lot across from the launch, cleaning it up. Another one was trying to weave some kind of management into the parking lot if they're going to be grinding it down. Or possibly adding some structure or improve the quality in Jericho of stormwater outfall. So since we didn't have a specific project, I put in a mitigation amount instead, giving us some leeway on what to do with that.
I know with the meeting's closed, we can't take additional information, but there was one clarification that I wanted to find out, and I don't know if Greg's still on the meeting or
He
not.
is.
So for 48 Jericho, my question was this going to be just I know they have to dig a trench and then fill that in and patch it up, but is this parking lot, he mentioned they're going to repave the parking lot when they're all done. So my question is this a grinding process and everything's going to be ground up and then regraded and resurfaced, or is it resurfacing the existing parking lot by just an overlay?
For the record, Gregory Morse, I believe this is just an overlay of the existing parking lot.
Well, can we condition that in the
Yeah.
orders, Amy, to say that it's an overlay?
Yeah,
Okay. So if they decide they want to do something more extensive, then they should come back to amend those orders. Because if they were grinding it up, I think there'd be more of an opportunity to do some additional mitigation on that parking lot as opposed to just resurfacing that. And then I had a little bit of a discussion with Greg and discussion with Amy about what we think is the appropriate mitigation for this work. You know, they are installing these sewer connection or pumps so that boats can be cleaned out and pumped out, as opposed to having a boat floating around or going somewhere else. So I think that's a positive step in keeping the harbor cleaner when these are readily available. But I also think that they could be doing some more for a cleanup around there. And I guess we just weren't sure what would be the better solution, whether it was infiltrators of some sort or try to intercept some of the runoff going into the harbor, or something in the road basin, or cleaning up the docks on the other side of the road that's not on their property, but the docks did come from that marina prior to their ownership. So I think Amy's thought that if we just have a monetary amount of money, then we can pick one or a couple of those projects, as long as we make sure that we institute it.
Yep.
Anybody have any thoughts on that? So
I like
rather than say you're going to do a specific thing, you're going to clean up the docks, or you're going to do infiltrators, or you're going to do some kind of a hood or something in the town's drainage, something, we're just going to say we'd would like X number of dollars, and then it'll go into an account that the commission can oversee.
That's
But
correct.
down there,
Yes.
yes, well, we have.
It's going to be one of those,
specify.
it could be what, let's say it's one of those projects. It's cleaning up
Yeah,
the area across the way that's on the edge of the marsh, or it's going to be some sort of water quality sort of thing that goes on
okay,
either on site or off site.
okay. Well, I just want to make sure it gets used there.
Oh, it's a good idea.
There's plenty of things to do right there in that
Yeah.
area. Okay.
Yep.
So we need
How
an
much
amount,
money?
Amy.
I put in, oh God, I can't remember. I think I put in 7,500.
Do we think that's enough?
I said 12.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure. I didn't get a chance to talk to the town engineer today for some pricing, so I kind of just put something in as a placeholder, honestly.
Hope seems high, but 10 maybe. 75 seems a little low.
Go
mean,
for 10.
It's an existing conditioned area. It's already paved. This is before them, but there's absolutely nothing there that does anything for the harbor or runoff.
Yeah.
So
What do you think about 10, Frank?
it's not my money, but I think that's a reasonable,
That's what I thought.
some
All
Brendan.
right, so let's put 10 in.
There's four of
See what
us here
Brendan
tonight,
thinks.
Penny.
Yeah.
Brendan,
Let me pick a number out of a hat. I don't know what to say. I don't,
well, right now, I think there's three of us that think that 10's probably a good number.
I think 10's a good number then.
Well, so it's unanimous for this evening. Okay,
Good.
thank you.
And if it's specific enough to just say, I'll put 10 and then say to care and custody of the commission within 3 months of the expiration of all appeal periods are utilized by the commission for offsite restoration of stormwater management improvements in the vicinity of the site.
Yes.
Amy,
Okay.
can we also give them the option of doing it on site if they want to come to us and say, listen, we'd like to, it's our money, we want to put it into our site. And as long as they come up with a mitigation that we feel is acceptable. You know, I just, we didn't have any real topography on that part. I guess Greg had some shots. It's pretty flat. But if water that's flowing on that parking lot is going right into the harbor and it could be intercepted and treated, that would certainly go a long way to make this a more positive project also. Follow me?
Yeah, I do. Offsite restoration.
They can come up with some verbiage that,
Yeah, I'll play with it a little bit. How about that? Yeah.
so if we can accept those in general, we can fill in the gaps.
Yep.
Okay. So now 30 Manchester.
Okay, 30 Manchester also got sent around.
Do we
And we
want to
did-
vote? Do we want to vote Jericho? with,
Yes.
So I take a motion for the orders of Jericho, as we've discussed and what's in already written up.
So moved, Frank.
So a motion from Penny, a second from
Richard,
all in favor. Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Greg. 30 Manchester. Penny, Amy rather, you want to just give us a little lowdown?
Okay, well, so it's not much different than what I recited during the hearing process, but so we came up with some orders and it going back to my notes and stuff and also reflecting on the comments that revised comments that came back from the state, the project comments that I
Mhm.
sent out to you guys too. You can see that we're conditioning a house, but we're not conditioning the entire project as was presented to you. So specifically called out our pervious pavers should be shell, no walls, and the garage should be elevated, undriven pilings like the house.
Mhm.
And the landscape plan is not specifically accepted. It's, we'd rather see some natural vegetation so that the dune can move, shift, and migrate. So. And
The only-
lattice was disallowed, which is something that you guys voted for.
Right.
Enhancement plantings shall be indigenous grasses and shrubs. And that just says a revised landscape plan is required for review and approval. And no retaining walls. So it's basically just no walls, no pavers, elevating the structures and sticking to indigenous vegetation. So that dune can move around and be natural.
Yeah. I just have one question. I can't remember the garage floor for the car to park on.
Shells.
Huh?
It's supposed to be shell. That was just something that I don't think that they really would like to have shell there. I think that
It's concrete
their
now.
preference would be to have it be a hard surface.
No, well,
But-
they can't do that. We did, the only thing that I just wanted to bring to mind is we did it in Hammer Rock and we also did it down on Bayberry Lane or one of those lanes, Frank, where what they did was they had like a little wooden ramp and then the actual parking area that the car was on was wood up 3 feet above the water, that's something you can do too, unless they just want to park on the shelves. But we did do that in a couple of spots where they actually drove up and then in the garage and it was wood underneath the car.
Right.
We did down Hammer Rock in the beginning.
But I think
you and I.
the problem, Penny, is that if the upper level is habitable,
Oh,
then
yes.
does the whole, that, I think that they requested that the upper level of
Oh,
that,
all right.
am I,
I don't
am I,
know.
am I right
But
about that?
I was just throwing that
Yes.
out, that we did do, some garages like that where they had to be elevated. But the crushed shells is fine by me. I just don't want asphalt or concrete in that garage on the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that the biggest snafu with that is that if it's habitable above, then does the whole thing have to be, the structural member have to be up higher?
I don't know.
I had a discussion with Greg DeCesar about this one also, and he was not, he was thinking that was not compliant if that structure had habitable space above it.
Yeah.
And there's a matrix for that we could look at with Bob, the building department, to see that, but I think that's something that we couldn't condition if it has habitable space
All right.
at that elevation.
Yeah.
And then I think the other part of the discussion was in the landscape plans, like Amy said, between hard surfaces and vertical surfaces, whether that's more than what would be allowed in that. The house is already getting substantially larger. Yes,
Yeah.
it's going up on piles, but just like the discussion with Mr. Hannon earlier, it probably doesn't need to be any hard surfaces
Yeah.
or impervious surfaces. And some of these pieces that are gonna keep the water from flowing through.
Yeah.
So if we think that's adequately addressed in there, I think the house could be conditioned. But not those other pieces. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Frank, the only things, I think it's fine to condition the house, and I think we may see this thrown back at us a little bit. There's no dune to be moved, first of all. It's already behind, the dune is in front of a wall that's been there now for 80 years. There's no dune to be moved. So,
Okay.
there's one area that could come back to haunt us. And number two, all of the area around the garage currently is solid. I'm not advocating that it should be solid, but we've consistently allowed people that have had solid to
Yeah.
keep it solid. And that's another area that I think this may come back to haunt us.
Right. But I think, Richard, in the past, a lot of times when things were solid, that if the house footprint basically stayed the same size,
Yep.
or if the work were elevating an existing house without changes, these projects are substantially increasing the footprint of these homes. And
Oh,
and
yes.
so that area, yes, it's open underneath, water can flow in, it could drain to some area, but it does change the characteristics. And that was a discussion I had with DEP.
Yep.
And that if we're going to allow them to expand that footprint and that area that the house sits on, then we're not compelled at all to say, yeah, you can still keep your hard driveway or whatever. You want to make the house bigger and you want to have a larger area that's encompassed with decks and the house and whatnot, that's fine. But some of the trade-off is going to be the loss of pavement and other hard surfaces that you had before.
Yeah. No, as I said, I'm not advocating that they should keep it. I'm just wondering if it's going to come back to haunt us. But
Well,
I'm fine with it the way it is. I'm fine with the conditions the way they are.
okay.
So you want a motion?
Yes, please.
I make a motion, we accept the conditions as discussed.
That's Penny. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
From Richard? All in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Great.
All right.
All right. What else do we have?
We are down to signing of documents and your update on open space.
So,
I have one question.
sure.
Are we meeting in person next week or online?
Aha. Well,
Jen Smith says she got it all figured out. You guys can do whatever you want.
yeah, we can do whatever we want. I found it a little intimidating, to tell you the truth, when I went in there tonight. Or not intimidating, overwhelming. There's a lot going on when you have that.
What do we have
screen.
what do we have for an agenda next week?
It's gonna be tough. It's a full agenda because we've got the rolling wave of projects, so.
Well,
It's
it's
not intimidating. I'm
I
not
mean-
coming in.
You're
what's
not,
that?
No,
you don't want to be there.
nope,
So
I'm staying home.
And I know Jen Foley would stay home too, so it would be Andy, Rich, Brendan, Frank, most likely. Doug will be out.
I mean, we gotta,
problem.
I think it's worth giving it a shot. We got the technology, the screen here is awesome. If we stumble a little bit,
I just might have to wear sunglasses, honestly.
Well, then put your sunglasses on,
No,
girl.
seriously, it's so bright in there. It's like, but anyway,
all right, well, get the rose colored
So
ones.
the answer is if we want to come, we can come.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
I'll look forward to seeing a few people.
yeah,
And you can look forward to seeing me. Oh, boy.
there we go. Well, let's give it a shot. I mean, Seth
Okay.
seems to think he's got it pulled together. There was a couple little glitches. But I think I
We're
say
up to
we,
the challenge.
the
Okay.
royal we, because I'm not going to be able to help much, but Jen's going to bring like an extra thing of espresso with her next. So
Okay.
she'll be on.
You
I
can move
learned.
on now.
Okay.
You answered my question.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
just good news is that the contractor that was awarded the contract for the accessible picnic areas and completing the Damon project has done a phenomenal job this past week. And he's pretty much got all that worked out, and he will be coming back once he's so far ahead, he doesn't have his gates or picnic tables. So once we compile a few things and work out a couple of change orders, then he'll come back to do those. But if you have any opportunity to take a ride at any of those places, it's looking really good. And once those picnic areas are in there, a concern has come up about trash and how we're gonna, if if we're gonna have more issues with trash or whatnot from having these picnic areas in there. I think we're just gonna have to kind of see how it goes. When Paul Scott, it's too bad. I mean, there'll always be someone that will spoil something.
Yeah.
When Paul Scott and I were taking a ride in on Saturday, someone had discarded a couple of bicycles on the road into Appleton. And
You're kidding.
no,
Oh, God.
and they were clearly junk. The wheels were all twisted.
I just don't understand people. I just don't get it.
And I took a look at the town forest up on Maple Street, and it's not as bad as I've seen it before, but
Yeah.
people go in and have a snack or whatever, and they just toss the stuff out the window. So, I mean, overall, I've been encouraged that Higgins McAllister, maybe by going by all those houses, people aren't abusing that. Bates Lane with residents on Bates Lane. And then we really haven't had an issue, and I shouldn't be saying it out loud, but we haven't had an issue there. And the town forest now with the safety building across, people would be crazy to dump stuff in there. So in some ways it helps, the Driftway Park, we get a little bit of debris, but it's not too bad. You'll find the occasional person that gets frustrated or just doesn't want to pay or whatever and goes and dumps their crap somewhere, but I don't know what you do about it. So, but I'm really happy that this finally, with all the setbacks that we've had with budgets and everything, is finally coming to fruition, and it's looking good.
That's good
And I
news.
was up there when Paul and I have been there a couple of times looking at things. There've been folks using the property, and they've been very appreciative and positive, and some birders in there watching some bluebirds and other folks using it and saying how much they enjoy it. So
When I was up there today, Frank, on a Monday afternoon, there was three cars in Crosby, and a guy followed me in Bates, so that he had his dog with him. And I mean, that's a Monday afternoon.
no, it's
It's being used. They're being used, which is wonderful.
what we are looking to see if we have enough funds is whether we can expand that parking area at
Yeah.
Bates.
Yeah.
Because the Conservation Commission wouldn't allow them to make it bigger at the time for wetlands, but we think we've figured out
Way around it.
we think
Yeah,
we've
because
figured out
that is a little tight, the turning around in there.
yeah. So, but I think we can stay out of both buffers and
Yeah.
and create another 6 or 8, 10 spaces. So,
That would be good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
all right.
But I've had
Well-
nothing but positive comments back from people about
it's-
the trails, and they're just thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
Well, and we're fortunate, the folks that are keeping those trails up and marked them all. It looks good. Oh, and Jen and I had a chance to meet and take a look at Border Street a little bit and start to talk about how we're going to make that usable. So we met with Karen Canfield on Saturday and had somewhat of a discussion about what's the next step to do with Border Street.
Gonna make a goat farm out there?
Well,
Hey,
Why not?
we just need a goat farmer,
oh, I'll be the goat farmer,
I'm sure.
and I'll have Gabby chase the goats around. And
There you
Dave.
go.
Don't
All
tell
right.
my wife that there might be goats around. She wants them.
Oh,
And we
Well, you
don't
could
have
be
the room.
you could be the goat farmer, Richard.
No, because that would be the problem. She'd want them and I'd have to take care of them.
oh, well,
Uh,
hey, it
Hey.
could be worse, Richard.
I know, I got it.
happy what
Work.
there's a saying
Ah.
for that, Richard. Something about a
All right,
happy,
all right,
happy.
that's enough. That's
All
enough.
right, guys. All right.
Have a good
Take a
night, guys.
motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll take a second.
Thank you.
A
second.
second.
Brendan,
that.
come on, Brendan.
Brendan, all in favor? Richard
Bye.
and Frank, yes. Hey, you guys have a good night.
Good night.